3, 2, 1.
Here we go!
Hey, it's Mark. Welcome to our new set in the studio life. We are hanging out here in Manhattan Beach, California, and we are thrilled. We have our own actual desk now. We've got our own background. We are so excited for all the stuff that we have to offer going forward, and this is emblematic of what it means to be in the studio life, is to go from 0 to 60 and then remember that you missed all these steps and go back to like 1 and then kind of work your way forward. And we're going to walk through this desk and the build that we did. We worked with a scenic company in order to try to build out something that was truly professional, something we're really genuinely excited with. And as a result, we have something to talk about. In the meantime, we've reconfigured the way we're running audio and camera and picture here in the room because, once again, when you have a new set, you need to take into consideration all kinds of other things. So we are so excited for this next edition, this next version, this next life of the studio life. So thank you for hanging with us. Today, I'm with my friend Golan. Golan is somebody who identifies talent, identifies projects all over the world, and he and I have met because of a particular project which we might or might not talk about. It's going to be his call. But in the meantime, I really want to bring him on, my friend Golan. Golan, how are you today, man?
I'm good. I'm a little bit under the weather, so I've got a little Dizzy Gillespie voice going on. But besides that, all is well. Sun is shining. My kids are healthy, and I'm happy. So overall, I would say life is not bad at all.
That's good. You know, I love that raspy voice. I mean, that's sexy, man. You know, it's you got to work it.
Yeah. Someone told me that I can either do 900 calls or I can ask people if they like scary movies. So it's one of the two.
One of the two, right. Well, hey, I'm glad you're feeling better. I know we were going to talk last week, and we're trying to work this cold out. So, thanks for taking the time and hanging with us, man. So where are you right now?
At the moment, I am in Barcelona. I'm in my home office over here. And as I said, I've got a couple of kids, so you might see behind me an occasional toy or some of their clothes or one of the carriers or something like that. But it is the home office, so that's par for the course.
That's right. We're not going to see a kid crawl in and someone else dive after the kid. I mean, the COVID Zoom call thing.
Never know. I like to keep it. I like to keep it kind of a surprise. We'll see what happens. If my wife dives in and does a barrel roll, just consider it part of the stunt team. It's all right.
I love it. I love it.
But I'm out here in Barcelona. We've been some of my partners and I have been out here now for a little while, and we have been putting together projects. We have been making some projects or consulting on projects, and putting together some stuff that's near and dear to our hearts as well. So it's been really fruitful thus far. Plus, I cannot complain because I'm out here in Barcelona. That's never a bad thing.
Yeah, I mean, for all of my travels, that's one area I've not been. I mean, there are a few areas I've not been, but that's one of them. So tell me a little bit. I know that you've got a lot of projects here under wrap. But what can you tell me? What are you doing out there in Barcelona? What's driving you these days?
Well, it's a handful of things. I've identified some filmmakers locally that I've really connected to creatively. Some of which my Spanish is not great. I worked a bit in Chile. I've worked out here for a while. I worked in Mexico. I taught at the University of Monterrey, or at least did a master class there. And somehow my Spanish is still just okay. But in the process, with my mediocre Spanish, I have identified and connected with a bunch of local filmmakers, whether that be directors, writers, producers, crew, etc. And that was part of the reason that I came here to begin with. There was a Spanish film, a low-budget Spanish film, that I won't get into right now because we're in the middle of contract negotiations on an extension for it. But I loved it. I thought it was really interesting. I thought it had potential to be a kind of a larger remake. I've been involved with remaking quote unquote foreign films. It's not foreign to them, but foreign for the US market. And in the past, and I thought this one was right for it. Topically, in terms of the topicality of it, in terms of how exciting I thought it could be. So I bought the rights to remake it, rewrote the script in conjunction with the original writer, the original director. And brought on some great American as well as international talent. We've been putting that one together. So that's what initially kind of got me over here. And in the meantime, I've now consulted on projects that have gone far and wide here, some in Spanish. And we've got 2 projects that were shot here that are in post-production now that I produced, one of which I directed accidentally. I am not a director, and I do not want to be a director, but somehow I ended up directing that one, which turned out to be for the best. And beyond that, putting together now a couple of series. One of the interesting things that's happening worldwide is the streaming services that are going everywhere are putting different offices around the world, and they're telling them that they need a certain percentage of their output to be in local language. But that also means that a certain percentage cannot be in local language. So there's some stuff that we're developing local language, just because I find that interesting, and I'm doing that in places where I don't speak one word of the language, but I'm doing it in conjunction with local filmmakers or local writers. Here, we have some that are in English, some that are not, and so we've got a lot of TV stuff going on as well. And so it's kind of been running the gamut. I'm also working in conjunction with Los Angeles and New York all the time. Part of the reason why I think my voice is gone and I have a little bit of a cold is because the hours that I work my Spanish hours when I'm working with local talent, and I work LA hours when I'm working with talent in Hollywood, and I do both every day. So it becomes a lot, but there's a lot of good stuff happening. And so in the interim, until there's no more projects to make, I'm just going to keep doing it.
Well, that's fantastic. It sounds like quite the jet-setting, exciting life. What is the factor? What are you looking for when it comes to that next project? I mean, it's and I want to kind of shroud this in the idea that it is not the world that it used to be, in the sense of you find a project that may have some market and you go because the market was fairly straightforward. You knew what those options are. What do you look for now in today's world when it comes to what you think might be a successful project, something to tie into?
I'm going to put aside IP for a moment, because that's the easy answer. Is right now everyone's looking for something that is tied to an existing brand or something that already has name recognition. Let's put that aside, because that's not what I'm looking for. I'm not, oh my gosh, I can't wait to find another IP. Okay, that's business. In terms of the creative side of things, character, I mean, look, I'm about to tell you something that is 100% a cliche, but it also happens to be 100% true. Character and story. If you give me a solid character, a fully realized character with wants and needs, and 3D all around, someone that I can relate to, the theme that character is dealing with is universal in some way, I'm going to get excited. And in addition to that, story, something that I hesitate to use the phrase high concept, because high concept has gotten a bad rap. It makes it sound like it's simplistic. But when I say high concept, I mean something, even if it's really complex and there's all these moving parts and all these layers and subtext and all the other stuff that goes with it, something that can be explained easily to somebody. So the idea of a high concept, I'm sure you've heard this 1,000 times, maybe your viewers have too. It's in between floors in an elevator. Can you explain the concept, right? Before they walk out, you got a captive audience. I want that, but it doesn't have to be because it's dumb or because it's one note. It can be something that is super complex, but still can be explained in a way where there's a bunch more I could tell you later if you're interested. But for right now, here's what it's about, plot-wise or something.
Yeah, and I remember you and I have had some good, healthy conversations on a project where we fought about story, not fought as adversaries, but fought meaning, what's the story? Right. We know what the idea is, the concept is, but how do we convert that into something that is actually a piece that could bring the viewer in and keep them there throughout? And so I know how important story is to you, and
or collaborators or actors or buyers or viewers or anything. Because part of it is, if I can pitch it to a buyer in a way that makes them go, I got it. Now tell me the details. That means they'll be able to market it to a viewer in the same way. And then they may watch, oh, it's Succession. It's basically Fox News. Okay, great. And then it's like, oh my God, there's so much else going on beyond just it's a rich family, everyone's fighting. We've seen that before, right? But this was done in a way that once you started getting into the layers and the subtext and the character and the things underneath the character that we find out 2 seasons in, it becomes one of the best shows, I think.
Yeah.
Maybe even in the history of TV, certainly on TV right now.
Right. So I want to ask now, but you know, everything we've just said is pretty obvious. I want to get to the part that's not obvious here. Maybe add a little controversy.
I warned you it was going to be cliche.
That's right. You know, we're always trying to shake things up a little. No, this is to me the core issue, which is even based on everything you just said, the idea that we're looking for story and good character. There's a lot of good story and good character out there, but ultimately we have to decide on one most important factor when it comes to what we do, which is who we work with. Because the greatest story in the world with the wrong people attached can be a project that's dead in the water. And I want to ask you to expound on this a little bit. When it comes to figuring out what projects you take on, what are the characteristics of the people involved? What are the things that you're thinking about in terms of, is this a person you're willing to work with?
Well, I'll give you an example. So there was an incubator that was done not long ago. William Morris Endeavor, Gersh, Keshet, a handful of other kind of larger agencies and production companies were involved, and I was brought in as a mentor. And the idea was there were a bunch of different mentors, some agents, some other producers, etc. And we each were assigned to one person. Most of what was happening there was you got a phone call a week, you got a little bit of information, you did a little extra work, we read it, we gave you notes, etc. I enjoyed working with the person who I was connected to as a mentor so much, and she was so passionate about the subject matter that she was talking about, but also knowledgeable about it. So when I ultimately, I'm going to jump ahead, after the thing was over, I told her, we're not done. This project is too good. You are definitely someone that I want to develop this further with. Let's continue this and see if we can take it somewhere beyond just mentor-mentee relationship. And now I'm attached as an executive producer, and we've taken it to other people, and we've brought on other collaborators, and we're rolling forward with them. Now, that doesn't happen all the time. I've been involved with pitch fests, and I've been a mentor, and I've been mentoring for now forever. I'm a professor. So I've been doing that sort of thing for a very long time, but very rarely do I say, okay, I'm going to keep going with you, as opposed to I've imparted some knowledge and good luck, right? Why did it happen? What I call her is my qualified expert, okay, number one. So this is a concept that I first heard when I was working in the reality world, in the unscripted world, which is if you're going to do a show about building a house, you need someone who's a carpenter who can say, I am an authority to the viewer, to the buyer, et cetera, that says, we know what we're talking about here. Okay? Someone that actually has knowledge of the subject matter and is passionate about it. So I have taken that, not just me, I'm sure other people as well, and have applied it in every arena you can imagine. So in this case, that particular was a film, now it's a series, was about the women pirates that were on the Caribbean at the time. And this woman has dedicated, as she says in her pitch, I have 2 children, my little girl who's sleeping in the other room right now, and this project, because that's how long she has been studying, immersing herself in it nonstop. Her email signature has that some pirate comment on it. When she sends me text, there's always a skull and crossbones or an eye. It's just part of her DNA at this point. And I was so moved, not just by the story and the characters and all the things we said that were the kind of obvious cliches, and also the topicality of it, another cliche, etc. But I was also moved by how much she cared about these characters, how real they were to her, how this wasn't just an idea that she thought was sellable. This was something she cared about and wanted this story to be told because she thinks the story deserves to be told, and she thinks the world can be better if this story gets out. And so I was moved by her. That sort of collaboration has yielded great results. Now, of course, there's never any guarantee of anything in this business, but when you have someone who cares that much and isn't kind of crassly saying, I think I have something that I know this network is looking for, so I created this thing in order to plug that hole, you're not going to get the same kind of reaction. You're not going to get the same passion.
Right.
That's something that
I
for
want
me
to talk
was
about,
a big difference.
Oh, I'm sorry, Golan. Go ahead.
No, that's it.
Oh, so I wanted to ask about the opposite, though. Passion is not in short supply in this business. Everybody thinks they've got the greatest idea, and when do you pull the plug? When do you know that a person is somebody you can't work with, or when do you find that a project has lived its potential life and has nothing left? When do you know that you're done?
Yeah, so I come from the development world originally. I was at agencies. I was a development executive for many years at very high levels. And when I was doing that, we would encounter, and even today, but that's when I learned about it initially, we would encounter writers who basically didn't know how to take notes or defended everything in a way that was not, I'm defending this in a way where we have a healthy debate. We'll come to something that collectively we get to a higher level together. It was more like no matter what note you gave, they were going to say, that was my favorite part, or that's the reason I wrote it, or you didn't understand that I kept trying to explain to people, even professionals, by the way. Unless you're sitting in the audience, sitting next to everyone watching that movie, or sitting in the living room with every single person watching that series and going, okay, well, what you're not seeing right now is that his mother was this and that, and you're starting to give those details. It doesn't matter what you had in your head. And sometimes the notes are going to fix things. So again, this might sound like a bit of a cliche, but for me, that was the biggest red flag, was someone who didn't know how to take notes, someone who was defending arbitrarily often or argumentative, often for no reason, and wasn't collaborative. Ultimately, this is the ultimate team sport, both TV and film. This is something where, except for the writer who sits in a room by themselves, you can also argue the editor, who often will, at least in the initial stage, sit in a room by themselves. This is a group of people all functioning. It's organized chaos. Every single person has a specific thing that they're doing, and the collective is what makes it work. Now, at the Oscars, a producer might walk up and get the Oscar for Best Picture, but they know, and everybody knows, that every single person down to the PA who made sure everyone got their coffee in the morning was an important and integral part of that success. And if you find someone who is passionate, who is, to your point, a lot of passion in this business, doesn't mean everyone's collaborative, doesn't mean everyone knows how to be part of a team. And that's a killer.
Yeah, I'm with you. We have people who walk into this studio every single day, it seems, with another idea. We get calls every day, another great podcast, another great thing. We either never hear back from most of them, so the natural level of attrition here is the easiest way of deciding which projects we take on. But we also have to figure out who's in it for the long term. And that is a really hard part of the process when it comes to running the studio, which is passion is great at the beginning. But so many artists, so many creatives either get busy or just move on to the next project so quickly that is a characteristic we're always looking for. Who's going to stick with this thing?
And to your point, who's going to deliver? I have definitely worked with people who are A, passionate, and B, they're sticking around, but when they say Tuesday, you're getting pages, and Tuesday comes and you don't get pages, their passion and their stick-to-itiveness does not necessarily equal results. And that's a major thing too. So I think those go hand in hand.
Right, I'm with you. So how has your business changed over the last handful of years? Obviously we're talking about the incorporation of new distribution platforms, and channels and things like that. Have you modified anything from when you started in this business till today?
Yeah, look, if I was starting to be, I left the studio system a good number of years ago, and I've been an independent producer since. If I had known then what I know now, I might have even developed things a little differently in terms of recognizing how much the streaming services were going to gobble up so much stuff and focus on IP, focus on name recognition, focus on talent, etc. But what I find is there's always a way. If you have a story and it's a good story, whether it's finding private equity, just quiet money in the marketplace from someone who's wealthy, or an affinity investor, someone who has a particular reason to invest in a project about blank, and that thing happens to be a thing they're interested in. Great. I have a project right now that I've been developing for a while that is set in Israel, and we have had a lot of trouble finding investors for it because it's political, it's a hot potato. And it's not even that it's partisan in one way or another. It's just that region, I don't want to hear it. And so for that, we've gone to people who have affinity and a reason to care about that region, a reason to hear stories that are told about people in that region, regardless of what side of the political aisle they're on, because again, it's not a partisan project. It's something where they're willing to listen when other people are not. There's always a way. So if you have a small project, you can get it made. Right now, one of the things that's happening in TV, can't call it TV anymore, streaming, is they're looking for big names, they're looking for stuff that already has name recognition. That being said, like I said, other countries are looking for content too that they can develop through their own, let's say, division of Netflix, or their own companies that will eventually be sold to one of these streaming services, or even elsewhere, that don't have the same parameters. So it's a matter of getting creative. So you asked me what I changed. I have expanded what my scope is. I am actually, instead of becoming more myopic and saying I'm going to do everything that fits the box that they're currently telling me they want everything to fix, I'm going the other way. I'm saying I'm developing everything I want to develop, all those cards that are on the wall, and I am taking every single thing that I find interesting, developing it. If it gets to a point where it's been developed within an inch of its life and is ready for the marketplace, I find places to take it, even if conventional wisdom states this one isn't going to sell now, because people are talking about what they know, which is often inside a very specific box, and I live outside of the boxes.
Right. Have you found your time outside of New York and LA to be a disadvantage, or is this such a connected world that you're able to be part of the communities you need to be in order to get those distribution deals done?
It's a lot more work because I can't just grab lunch. I used to teach a class in networking, and it was the easiest thing in the world when I was living in LA because it meant breakfast before work, I would grab something. I'd have a coffee during the day with someone. I would have lunch with someone. After work, I would have coffee or drinks. I would have dinner, and then I would go to a party. It was constant networking, whether I liked it or not. And every time I went anywhere, screening, a party, anything, it was always industry related because that's the world I was in. Even if I went to the Soho House or something like that, again, it's all just filled with industry people because it's Los Angeles. So it was very easy. Now I have to chase. I have to make appointments. I have to carve out a time, find a time that they're available to do something. And I'm still talking to people, but it's not as prolific as it was, which means that sometimes, as an example, I wrote a message to someone, a friend of mine, president of a big production company, who I've known for probably 2 decades at this point. And I realized that when I was writing to him, I hadn't written to him in months. And so it's one of those things where now it's not as easy as, hey, bud, what's up? It's like, hey, it's been a while. I'm not just writing you because I have something to say, but I also kind of am. Luckily, you've known me long enough, so I get a pass. And we got to do the catch-up thing. So there's a lot more work to be done on that front. But if you're willing to do the work, I have an advantage. And my advantage is I was in Los Angeles for a very long time. I worked at CAA. I worked at Marvel. I made big movies. I made big television shows. I already have my contacts. I built my Rolodex before I left. And so when I landed in New York, I went to New York not to move there. I went to New York because I was shooting a movie that I had written and was co-producing. And on day 2 of production, I met this beautiful woman, or re-met because we had gone to college together and hadn't spoken in 13 years. And now we have 2 kids together. So I didn't leave New York. I quit my job over the phone. I moved to New York and was like, I guess I'm an independent producer. I got a teaching job, and because I'd already been a professor since about 96, and just made ends meet until I could figure out, okay, what do I need to do to stay here? I guess I'll write movies set in New York, and I'll sell those. And as long as those sell and I'm on set, I have an excuse to stay here until she finally agrees to marry me. So I did that. And then eventually it was, let's go to Bulgaria. There's a studio there. I can do on-set rewriting. I can write scripts for the company. And then eventually it was all the other places that we've been, and we've been all over the world at this point, whether it's me teaching, whether it's me mentoring, whether it's me producing, whether it's me writing, it was always something. But I always had this cushion to fall back on, which was this pretty massive Rolodex that I had developed over the time that I had lived in Los Angeles. I say this not as a brag, but I'm known for my contacts. I'm known for knowing everybody, or at least at the time I left Los Angeles. So now, every once in a while, I hit up someone, and it's been even years, but they still already knew me. So I'm never cold calling, or almost never cold calling. That's where I am lucky. Or maybe I should say I wasn't lucky, I worked hard. But yeah, it is harder simply because I'm calling at midnight. I'm calling at 1 a.m, or I'm in the middle of with my kids. I step away from dinner because it's a perfect time in 11 a.m. in Los Angeles. So yeah, that part is hard. But besides that, no, I think I've built up enough of a career at this point that I'm able to play the game.
Right. And I couldn't imagine trying to start without contacts. It's so much easier to know a few people, at least a few people, in order to get started.
Yeah. Well, and look, an example is one of the filmmakers that I connected with here. Really talented and successful here in Barcelona, which does not mean in Spain, by the way. It means in Catalonia, in this one autonomous region in Spain, where a lot of the stuff he was doing was in his mother tongue, Catalonian, and while he has found success here, that doesn't mean anyone knows him around the rest of the world. And part of what I've tried to do is use my contacts to introduce him to people. Whether that means I've recently put him in touch with a manager who I think, kind of a high-profile manager, who I think would be good for him. And if it's not going to be that one, it'll be another one, because I think that he's a worldwide talent. So if he had to go do it on his own, he would continue to be very successful here locally and might not break out in another way. Also might. I'm not saying I'm the only one that can get him there, but my contacts are going to be helpful in pushing him to the next level.
Right.
And, if I didn't have that, then I would be still championing him, but I wouldn't be able to make those calls on his behalf.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Many of my contacts go back already, I hate to almost say the number, at 20, 30 years, but the people who I started with in many cases are the people who are my first call. And we go so far back, and yet we know that when we talk to each other, it's not all business. Sometimes it's just two people who've been around each other a long time just making a phone call. And it takes that pressure off that happens when you try to cold call somebody, and there's so much judgment on the other end of the line. Who are you? Is it worth me dealing with you? Is there something you want? You only want something from me. So there's this air of protection that's built in that doesn't happen when you're able to learn how to get to know people in person.
Absolutely. And part of it is, it happens to me all the time. I just recently had a conversation with somebody, and I won't say his name, but at a big studio, who I was calling to pitch something. And then when I talked to him, first it's two friends catching up. And what I discovered was something that hadn't been announced yet. His entire division, him included, was being, made redundant. And he was no longer going to be working there. And it was one of those things where I was like, well, obviously, A, I'm not going to pitch the project, of course. But beyond that, this call just became about something else, because he's my friend. This call became about helping him find his next gig. Right? So since then, and that's the friendship that we built up over the last 15 years, is since then, we've texted, I found out this person's looking, this company's looking, is this too low, is this too high, et cetera. And the entire thing now has become my focus is helping him get that next gig. And on the flip side of that, I talked to someone who, when I was an agent's assistant, my first job in Hollywood was at Abrams Artists, now called A3, as an assistant to an agent a zillion years ago. Harry Abrams, who no longer is there, was sitting, to my right, and this young executive called me and said, I'm trying to help this actress out. I know you're an assistant. Can you maybe hip pocket her? Early relationship building sort of thing. And I said, let me see what I can do. I found that I could, and I thought there was talent there, so I helped it. He ended up marrying her years later, and he credits the fact that he was able to get her hip pocket. It was like, the part of him looking good and him actually delivering on what he said he could do. And now he's the president of a big company. I talked to him the other day, pitched this project I was just talking to you about, actually, this female power project. And, that's a call that I couldn't have made if I hadn't known him now for over 2 decades.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's one of those secrets. Location and friends are so important here. And I find that the harder I work, the more sometimes I get in my own way. When I'm worried about producing projects or getting something out, you're actually not meeting people. You're not out there in the world building relationships, because those relationships are so vitally important to the success of everything that we do.
100%.
So, Golan, this has been a real pleasure. Real quick, before I let you go, the Oscars. Did you have a favorite? Are you proud of something? Are you not proud of something? How do you feel?
Let me put it this way: I really, really enjoyed Everything, Everywhere, All at Once.
Right.
I watched it. I'm a Michelle Yeoh super fan. From way back. I used to watch her stuff before anyone knew who she was, before Crouching Tiger, before anything else. Or anyone knew who she was, because a lot of people knew who she was. I mean, in the United States. But the Oscars did not go the way I would have had it go.
Yeah.
Almost on every single win. For me, speaking of superfan, I was obsessed with, and still am, Tar, which I thought was one of the most singular visions I've seen. I mean, in my memory, period. Yeah. Which I just thought it was something that transcended cinema. Mm-hmm. I thought her performance, Kate Blanchett's performance in it, was unreal, and I thought, I want to give Michelle Yeoh an Oscar. It's just a shame that she went up against one of the greatest performances in the history of the medium, period. So I was happy that Michelle got it, because I love her, but I was disappointed that it didn't go to what I thought was the best performance. I loved Ki Kwan. I thought amazing, and I was actually happy. I was okay with that one, but I still would have given it to Barry Keoghan for Banshees of Inisherin, which I thought was another movie that just blew me away. I would have given it easily to Colin Farrell. I would have given to Barry. I would have given it to any number of people. And that film was another one that I just couldn't get enough of. And I love Jamie Lee Curtis. I mean, I think she was part of my male development watching Trading Places and Fish Called Wanda and all of that. But I thought that was the weakest performance in that group, and the most cartoonish performance in that group. I would have given it to Stephanie Sue in that movie if I had to give it to someone in that movie. But I would have given it to, I'm blanking on her name right now, the one from Banshees of Inisherin. Yeah. Which I thought was so soulful and just unbelievable. I would have easily given Everything Everywhere All at Once an original screenplay Oscar, which is, if you look back at the history of the Oscars, that's generally where the weirder movie goes. Mm-hmm. In original screenplay, it's like, you did something insane. You also made a lot of money. Congratulations, good job. But I probably wouldn't have given cinematography to Western Front. I probably wouldn't have given the soundtrack, which sounded like something from cutscenes from a PlayStation video game. I don't know. The whole thing for me was wrong. And so it was, I wasn't disappointed because I learned a very long time ago not to care about the Oscars. I remember still the year that broke my brain, which was the year of Titanic, a movie that I still love. And I'm very happy was as successful as it is. In fact, I just helped put together a project with Billy Zane that my friends are shooting right now. So I still got little tendrils connected to it. But that's the year that LA Confidential came out, and I don't know what else to say. LA Confidential is one of the greatest movies of all time, and it's in the year that Helen Hunt, who is a wonderful sitcom star, and I loved her in Mad About You, but for her to be Kate Winslet, I think it was Judi Dench and Helen Mirren. I don't remember who it was. It was like, I remember writing at the time, it's like four of the greatest actresses of our generation and a sitcom star, and sitcom star won. What's happening here? Strange. Jack Nicholson, who is my spirit animal, beating Robert Duvall in The Apostle, or even Matt Damon, Good Will Hunting. I think that year, it was just strange. Everything was wrong with that year, and I remember going, "Oh, this is about money and popularity." Okay, now I get it. And since then, I've been like, all right, let me see what money and popularity are going to do, or topicality. Now it becomes also this political stuff, and so each thing kind of makes the decision on its behalf. Yeah. So this year became something that to me was a lot of things other than marriage.
Yeah, but, I will tell you,
it was still fun to watch.
I'm not all money and popular. I mean, I think that there are a lot of factors here when it comes to the vote.
Yeah.
I've been a Grammy voting member for a long time, up until a few years ago. And I remember trying to cast a vote. And it's hard to figure out what factors to pay attention to. What really makes a great album end to end is, it is influenced by outside forces. So you can't put it into isolation. But I felt very good about Everything Everywhere. I loved the Brendan Fraser win. And again, it's there are factors here, right? One factor is the performance. Say again?
I haven't seen The Whale,
yeah.
So I can't speak to that one.
But I think it was also, a byproduct of deserve, or there was a good feeling there, something extra. It wasn't just a performance; it was the whole story, the package. It was, there's always a little bit of backstory here. And there's always lobbying. There's always pressure. You like it or not, there's a pressure to vote for all kinds of different factors, and these voters are under all kinds. They know, they can feel the political pressure, the social pressures, and things like that when it comes to their votes. So overall, I felt good. I felt Jamie Lee Curtis was such a wonderful emotional win. I agree with you. She may not have had the best performance, but it kind of felt good after all these years to see.
Her speech made me tear up. I will say that.
Exactly.
Yeah. You know what it reminds me? It reminds me of when you watch the Olympics, and they have, before someone competes, they have a little documentary, and they're like, he grew up in this small, poor village, and his brother was eaten by an elephant, and like they tell you all the sob backstory, or they tell you like the triumph over adversity stuff, and you're like, I'm crying. For me, those are epic stories. I'm always crying. I'm always rooting for them, willing to. And then there is a merit-based competition in which somebody wins based on actual, trackable winning and loss. And the thing that makes me crazy, but I also know is part of the system, is you have that same thing. Great story, great backstory. It's a comeback. It's the first Asian woman to win, Best Actress, like all of these different things. And then it's opinion. And I understand that that's what this is. It's art. Art is always based on opinion. And so that's exactly how voting occurs, is ultimately an opinion, and it can be 1,000 other factors. There isn't you got 4 points, you got 3, so you won, period. That doesn't exist in art. And so I recognize that everything I just said is an opinion. It's something I remind my students of, and even the people I'm working with all the time. I've had projects that have been passed on. This is for everyone, your audience. I've had projects that have been passed on so many times I'm afraid to tell you the number, but then ultimately sold And all that tells, and by the way, you can look at some of the most successful movies and TV shows of all time that were passed on by every studio twice. Famously, Memento. Everybody passed on it so many times that ultimately Soderbergh convinced the studio to just release it themselves, something that they'd never done before. And of course, it started Nolan's career and is one of the greatest independent films ever made. So it's all just opinion, and people can be wrong. And there is no right and wrong in opinion, even though I think people can be right and wrong. But ultimately, don't get discouraged is my point, because one guy is going to say, God, I would have given it to Cate Blanchett, but obviously enough people disagreed with me that somebody else got the award. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, you're waiting for the one person who thinks yours is a yes. And so don't worry about all the no's.
That's right. I agree. And I happen to think that it's there's an objective component to art. There's such a thing as the really bad stuff that we can sometimes do away with. Although occasionally we're wrong on that too. But once it meets the threshold, yes, it's completely artistic, and then there are pluralities. There are vote splitting. You can only, in some categories where people are voting, you can have two great projects take the primary votes away from the third project, or open the door for a third project. So, but I'll tell you, the year that broke me was
the way they're doing the balloting.
Yeah, I mean, they do some fixing. I know what they're doing in order to try to fix that on the Grammy side more than I know about the Oscar side. But I will tell you, it was fun. It was a fun year to watch, and also because of the fallout from Will Smith, just to see how they handled that, I thought was entertaining.
Yeah, that was interesting. And I'm friendly. Will was a client when I was at CAA, and I'm friendly with people on his staff now, and I think everyone was surprised by what had happened. Obviously, I knew him on a personal level to be such a wonderful human being that for me it was, I think, maybe even more shocking than the public persona alone. But it kind of goes to tell you everyone can have a really bad day, and sometimes it happens in front of 100 million people, and then, oops, that's a problem. But yeah, I was curious how they were going to handle that fallout. I think, look, it was a little. This is not I don't want to say this as an insult. It was a little boring, the Oscars this year, because there weren't as many surprises. There weren't as many, shock moments. But that was deliberate. They were like, we're a safe place. Come back, enjoy yourself. Because they could have gone the other way. They could have gone Golden Globe style and been like, everyone's going to get drunk and we'll see what happens. Like Ricky Gervais always talked about, or when Jack Nicholson's going to get up and he's clearly blitzed, or Jim Carrey's going to talk out of his butt or something like that. Oscars still is, the elder statesman in the room, and this year was a good reassuring year of we're still, you can still count on us. We're still here to entertain, not just to shock.
Well, there you go. So this is now our post-Oscar wrap-up here on the Studio Life. So Golan, listen, it was great to talk to you. I've got projects to pitch to you, so you're going to get a call from me, my friend.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, listen, it's great. I thank you for hanging with us tonight here from Spain. I really appreciate you taking some time with us.
Absolutely, I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me, and it was a real pleasure.
All right, my friend. I'll talk to you soon. We're gonna head back here on the Studio Life. I'm just gonna wrap this up. Go on, stick around here for a minute if you can. So this is another edition here of the Studio Life, and it's obviously a pleasure. Listen, Golan's amazing. Thrilled to have my friend join, and there's so much knowledge to convey, and I think there are a lot of great lessons here. We got a lot of stuff coming up. Please don't forget to subscribe and like. We're going to talk to you about how we built our studio, and obviously we're going to get into a lot more parts of the business. But we're really proud of this room, man. I'm telling you, I wish we had another camera, but sometimes you only have one camera here in the studio working. But we will show it to you down the road. In the meantime, hang in there and keep watching, more replays of the Oscars, and we'll talk to you soon.
3, 2, 1.
Here we go!